Welcome to the Cosmic Dispatch, a show about bodies, celestial and earthbound, time, experience, and the relationship between all of them. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and welcome and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me slash us today. I have someone coming in. Um, on this June 4th, 2023. Happy June. Happy Gemini season. Happy Pride Month. I know a lot of people are finishing up school related things right now with an eye on summer proper. But for those of us who aren't on a school schedule, I think it already kind of feels like summer. In Kingston today, Kingston, New York, it's a little gray and cloudy, but I'm still having that internal clock of okay, 3 months of doing more of whatever I want. um, but I'm starting to work outside and write outside, planning fun activities for the next few months, having people drop by, getting the house ready for visitors, traveling a little bit more, cooking outside and being outdoors past 8 o'clock and have it still be light. I got my first watermelon. I got my first mosquito bites. So yeah, I'm already in that summer frame of mind. I'm into it, and I hope this month treats you well. We got a big week of astrology ahead of us. I hope you enjoyed that little lull in the action that we had last week because this week is louder and more vibrant. I actually like the look of this week a lot, but it's not really relaxing. Um, and so I do have astrologer Mandee Sheeler joining me today, as she does every month for her full moon report. The full moon perfected last night. So we are, as of today, still in the full moon phase. We'll be hearing from Mandee in a little bit about that. And as usual, she's bringing some audience questions for us to discuss. Before we get to the astro weather for the week, I'd like to share the monthly overview of June, which you can find in Chronogram magazine along with your horoscopes. And those are available online and on shelves right now. So, this bird's eye view of June is called Racing Minds and Hearts Aflame. So we enter June in the middle of Gemini season with a blazing full moon in Sagittarius on the 3rd. This is a time when thoughts move at a clip and inflammatory news travels far and wide. Expect communications to move faster than usual as Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, races through Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. So it's not doing all those signs in the month of June, but during this month of June, we are going to see the three expressions of Mercury. Typically, Mercury spends about 3 weeks in each sign, but this month, for instance, it completes its whole tour of Gemini in just 2 weeks. So, moving on might be the most uttered phrase of the month, as we also have Saturn stationing retrograde on the 17th. So, when Saturn pauses and reverses, it's less dependable as a trusted timekeeper. So and that's Saturn's job, right? It's Saturn is also in mythology known as Chronos, which translates into time. We think of things like chronology or the aforementioned chronogram. That's how we keep time. And so that's happening mid-month. And on June 5th, Venus enters the fiery sign of Leo, where it will spend an extended 4 months due to its retrograde. And in Leo, Venus is flamboyant, ardent, proud, and desirous of all that is playful and colorful. Watch for themes that emerge during this time, as they might be the beginning of stories that play out until October. Mars is already occupying Leo, making Venus's cohabitation a sign of fertile unions that are dramatic in nature. The red hot lovers, which would be Mars and Venus, get cooled off a little bit when the sun enters Cancer to initiate the summer solstice on the 21st. Though the temperature might be rising, the sign of Cancer urges us to hide in the shade a little bit and stay close to home. It's an excellent time to reconnect with family and nurture emotional bonds and just get close with everyone who is dear to us. Mercury's entrance into Cancer on the 26th may prompt some conversations about safety and security in our personal lives and on the world stage. So tread lightly on sensitive subjects because at that time, with Mercury in Cancer, feelings are enmeshed with our thinking. And so that just makes us ultra sensitive. But being ultra sensitive is no excuse for not having important conversations. So definitely do have them. Just take note and keep in mind that you might be talking about something completely ideological or political, but those seemingly very intellectual conversations are going to be entwined with deeper deeper feelings rooted in like personal safety and security. So there's the broad picture of June. Before we move on to the more detailed astro weather for the week, I just want to say thanks to everyone who supports this show and gives us such great feedback. It really helps us guide our work. Please continue to share your astrological experiences and musings, ask questions, and give us show and guest recommendations by emailing us at thecosmicdispatch@gmail.com. And you can stay up to date with all of the Cosmic Dispatch content on our Instagram. And please subscribe to the Cosmic Dispatch on YouTube if you're a visual person or you like to follow along with a transcript. So, now that that's out of the way, um, let's get into the very, very interesting astrology of the week. Note that a big, bold, fiery full moon in the sign of Sagittarius perfected last night at 11:41 p.m. Eastern. So that is what kicks off this week. And Mandee will go into more detail about that. But on the heels of that, which is today, June 4th, Mercury conjoins Uranus. In fact, that happened just about 10 minutes ago today, a little before the start of this show. So hopefully, this show provides a lot of light bulb moments for you. I love a good Mercury Uranus conjunction. Here we have the planet of the mind and communication blending with the planet of awakening, liberation, and disruption. So, this is a time for mental breakthroughs and epiphanies. If you've been stuck trying to solve a problem or make a change, this is the kind of transit that can signal a significant release of energy. In the sign of Taurus, we're thinking about practical subjects. We're looking for a deviation from a rut or a habit. This could also signal changes in the way we think about money, resources, our bodies, and pleasure. Try something new. It just might work. Allow yourself to be surprised. Um, in some practices, Uranus is called the higher octave of Mercury. So, where Mercury is curious, communicative, and mechanical, Uranus expands on that by actively pursuing innovation, breaking down barriers that keep us from moving and moving our experience into the ethereal, energetic, and astral planes of being, of existing. So Uranus is often referred to as the sky god. So think of images of the clouds parting and light piercing through the veil of darkness, and listen for what's coming through intuitively. So, and then, and then on June 5th, now this is huge, folks. And I'll be exploring this for the next few months. So, on the 5th, Venus enters Leo. Typically, Venus spends about 3 weeks in one sign, but due to its upcoming retrograde in July, Venus will spend about 4 months in Leo. This means 4 months of a more extroverted expression of Venus, more fire, more heat, drama, passion, presentation. And not only that, however, because when any planet goes through its retrograde phase, we go through a deep dive of what that planet in our chart at this time in our life represents. So we're not dealing with superficial Venus here, unless you want to. Um, you can, but if you opt out of this deeper thing that can happen, you'd be missing a lot. We're embarking on a 4 month investigation of all things Venus, all things Leo, and all things that the Leo house in your chart represent. Um, we're also rehashing some life events from 8 years ago specifically. 8 years ago, Venus was pretty much in this same exact part of our chart doing its retrograde thing. So look for echoes of whatever happened 8 years ago, or maybe picking up where you left off from 8 years ago. That could express in a lot of different ways. So pay attention, especially to what comes up around this first and second week of June. It's the beginning of your Venus and Leo story. And I'll be talking more about this as Venus moves through the different phases of her journey, which lasts until the beginning of October. But in the more immediate phase of her journey, as in this week, Venus comes into Leo with some heavy duty intensity. Remember a few weeks ago when I was talking about 0 degrees Aquarius and how for a while that's the hot degree because any planet entering a new sign, right, as it makes its entrance, is going to make an aspect to 0 degrees Pluto, where Pluto is still very, very, very slow. That's why it's hanging out there. Well, on the 5th, right after Venus enters Leo, it makes an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. This could symbolize a couple of days when we could become quite obsessive about the things and the people we cherish, where we feel some of our own shadow material come up around the ways we relate to people, the ways we express ourselves and our creativity, and maybe even come upon some hidden tensions around our money and resources. So think the darker nature of love, think the underbelly of love, dark beauty, and dark money. And just to intensify this even more, Venus squares the moon's nodes in Taurus and Scorpio on the 8th. So we have a little T square going on there. Um, this would add to the all or nothing type of vibe of the Pluto Venus opposition. And then throw in the full moon in Sagittarius vibes at the very top of the week. And I would expect some big declarations, ultimatums, and very bold gestures. It's real winner take all kinds of energy. Um, Maybe you're in a situation that needs that kind of energy. You need to get to the bottom of something. You need to exert some power or control. This kind of situation is great for that. Use it. But just try to gauge if that much force is truly needed, or if you're putting that kind of pressure on situations out of fear or a need to dominate. And usually, when we feel like we need to really control a situation or we need to step in and like dominate a person or a thing, um, it's because we're scared. If we don't have fear, if we're comfortable, we're not going to try to tighten our grip on something or control. So, so some of that might be coming up as well. Um, and with Pluto in the mix, the deep truth about something is available if you have the courage to look at it and the maturity to take it on board. So, yeah, these are some real succession types of vibes going on here for all of you fans of Succession. I mean, I'm a fan. And if you were looking for like an example in everyday pop culture, that show really has Venus, Pluto, Scorpio, Taurus just written all over it. Um, so, yeah, there's one example if you want to have some fun checking that out. And yeah, and to complete this week's astrology, when we come back from our break, which we're going to take in a second here, we'll have Mandee Sheeler delineating this gorgeous full moon in Sagittarius. So let's hear some messages from our community. You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and I'm here with astrologer Mandee Sheeler talking about this week's astro weather. And we start the week under a big, bright, beautiful full moon in Sagittarius. Mandee, what's going on with that?
Hi, Cory. Um, it's a nice palate cleanser, I feel like, from the lunations that we've had. It's a change of pace, and I'm here for it. Do you want me to go ahead and jump into my full report?
Unless you'd like to share something before that, you are
Let's,
totally welcome.
okay, no, let's get to it. So this month's lunation is taking place on the mental axis of Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is interested in the gathering of information for the sake of learning, and Sagittarius is concerned with collecting experiences in an attempt to teach us about something larger. Both signs at their core are concerned with the collection of information and learning. Gemini represents the lower mind. The lower mind is the domain of the things like the minutia and the day-to-day data that make up our lives. It's our local network, and it's symbolic of all the information and connections that we have readily accessible to us. It's the people, information, communications we experience and engage with every single day, sometimes without even really having to fully think about it. The lower mind is logical and helps us navigate our daily lives. Gemini is the mutable air sign of the zodiac and becomes ungrounded or has trouble sticking when it gets out of balance. Too much Gemini energy can lead to things like anxiety from a racing mind or overwhelm from a mind that feels too full. Sagittarius is the realm of the higher mind. Our higher mind is on a quest for enlightenment and encourages us to think more broadly. It's where we travel to get away from our day-to-day lives. The moon in Sagittarius is optimistic, idealistic, and always takes us beyond what we think we know or where we would typically go. Sagittarius energy is fun and upbeat. The sign has a playful and free spirit, and it always helps to lighten the mood. All in all, this moon is a nice palate cleanser after the last couple of months. This moon in Sagittarius seems playful on the surface, but if you take a closer look, you'll see there's an invitation to take something a little bit further. There's an invitation to seek deeper meaning. What I'm envisioning is something like accepting an invite to a social event or social gathering, maybe a happy hour, but ending up sitting by the pool talking with somebody and having a more philosophical conversation towards the end of the gathering. Um, this lunation is ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, and this year-long transit has the potential to bring us collectively closer to living in sync with the natural world around us. It also has potential to play out as digging our heels in further and continuing to hoard resources. Jupiter in the same sign as Mercury and Uranus creates more of a mentally stimulating and intellectually active tempo than Mercury typically has in Taurus. This can add to the mental load of this lunation. It's important to bear in mind the larger question of what is this teaching me as we work through some of these larger scale thoughts and ideas. For me personally, this week has been a lot about ordering my life in a way that the smaller bits and pieces help to develop or advance some larger vision I have for myself and for my family. I'm making sure the smaller, more mundane choices I'm making are informed by my bigger picture. Another thing that's come to my mind a lot is this idea of faith deconstruction. There's this movement within Christianity to deconstruct faith and belief. It seems like there's been this mass exodus of Christian believers, but there's also a really interesting rise in these spiritual healers or self-proclaimed gurus. With so much uncertainty in our lives, it's easy to want to turn to someone that claims to have answers, but it is wise to keep asking questions and understand our own values and individual truth or desire. A lot of people are questioning their faith and the narrative they've been fed for most of their life. I think this was initiated during the Saturn-Pluto tension that took place in Capricorn, but now that there's been this outer planetary movement, there's able to be movement there. There's a recognition of the more granular substance that makes up this whole old versus new thing. It looks like there's a lot of questions about the things people were told to have faith in all their lives. There's a clash with their real lived experience versus what their faith tells them to believe or how to be. It's as if the data they have spent their time collecting doesn't fit into some larger picture that's been painted for them. People respond to this in a myriad of ways, but I often find people most are likely are tempted to fly off the handle, fly off the rails, or really double down on their beliefs. In the grand scheme of things, Sagittarius is the wise spiritual one, a role that can very easily teeter on the edge of cult leader. As I've said, we currently have Jupiter in Taurus. Taurus is fixed and stubborn. It's also co-present with Uranus and Mercury, so there's this emphasis on mental processing and likely an intensification of questioning. Questions are flying out left, right, up, down, top, and bottom. They're seeking and edging us further and further. This is a wonderful time to check in with your spiritual well-being, see if you can recognize where you have blind faith and where you're aimlessly following along, and ask questions to any spiritual advisors or practitioners that you are in conversation with. If you aren't working with anyone or are looking to begin or exploring a philosophical or spiritual path, take a look around. What you may be seeking may be right in front of you.
Thank you, Mandee.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I, this full moon in Sagittarius, we think Sagittarius, very obvious, big, like right there in your face and good feeling. I I think this full moon's a little sneakier than it first appears. Like if we're just looking at the the planets that are ruling the lunation. So M- Mercury rules the sun in Gemini. So sun's in Gemini right now. Just like maybe now half an hour ago, the sun just made a conjunction with Mercury in no, I have this wrong. No, yeah, there was a Uranus,
Uranus.
Uranus,
Yeah, Uranus
Mercury
Mercury
conjunction
conjunction. Yeah.
in Taurus.
Yeah.
And also just a couple days ago, Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, made a conjunction with the North Node.
Yeah.
That's a lot of intense stuff going on with the planet Mercury and the sign of Taurus. And I got a little messed up there because Mercury rules Gemini and Jupiter rules Sagittarius.
Sag-
And but that what's going on with Jupiter is ruling the moon. So that would actually be the lunation ruler. And you know, Sagittarius has a reputation for it's not it's not Gemini, it's the opposite of Gemini, even though Sagittarius loves its questions for its own reasons. But it's not living in a place of de- detachment from those questions. There's investment. And then we have that the ruler of Sagittarius in Taurus, which doesn't play around either. So it takes that, oh, this is going to be like a good time, like party full moon. And it's like, yeah, but like you said, then you end up talking to someone at the party and then you kind of get into it. And it's not so lighthearted because you're starting to like dance on some of their very deeply held philosophies and belief systems or worldviews, and then it gets a little tense. Um, so yeah, so yeah, it's good. It's a palate cleanser. It's a different vibe, but like underneath there's still and also I'm just being like super nerdy. This particular lunation, it it pulls out what we call an octile cross.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and that's like a super nerdy minor aspect pattern, but it pulls in the Venus Pluto opposition by sesquiquadrate and
Okay.
semi square. And so it's like that Venus Pluto opposition is like the shadow underneath the Sun Moon opposition. But we have two oppositions. And that's actually pretty intense. Um and I love what you mentioned about faith and I know nothing about um any religious developments or movements right now, so that's really interesting.
Yeah. I find it interesting as well.
um yeah, so for our friends who are curious about the moon in Sagittarius natally, like if you have what's going on in the sky in your chart, um what might that be like? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I have a lot of Sagittarian moon friends and family. And so I feel like I have some good experience to draw from on this. One thing I notice is that they're usually always, there we go. They're a good time. They like to keep things kind of light and they're fun. They're not always the most serious of people. I have found that they may sometimes struggle to identify or pinpoint some of the smaller data points that inform how they feel about things. But I think overall they're very adventurous. I find their energy to be very captivating. I kind of get wrapped up in Sagittarian energy, and I I find myself when I'm in it with them, like willing to follow them to the ends of the earth in the name of a good time, and we're just having fun. And oh, look, here we are. They're really exciting. There's an exciting element to it.
Hmm.
I think they have this ability to kind of make light of things that maybe other people would find a little heavier to deal with. I've noticed they are able to identify the silver lining in things when I'm not able. I have had experiences where I've felt like they've been a little flippant about emotions or how people may feel about things. But they have this incredible faith about them that I find really inspiring and just like, oh, yeah, I like good
Well,
Sag vibes.
that's what I found interesting about what you were saying about this Christian movement and questioning faith,
Yeah,
because isn't that the whole thing about faith, is that you don't question it? Like, and so to say, oh, I'm a person of faith, and I'm also trying to deconstruct it and understand why. I don't know what you think, but like for me, doesn't that kind of go against the whole point of faith? If you have a guarantee and you have all the reasons of why something is, or you're able to lock the facts down, well, then there's no need for faith. It's sort of like trust. That's not trust. You're safe. Like you can prove it. So yeah, that's interesting.
that is an interest. Yeah, um, I struggle with it because as we talked about last, I'm always asking questions, so I can't imagine not questioning
Mhm.
things. But yeah, it that makes total sense that faith would be the absence of that need.
Yeah, and I don't know like there's a right or wrong way to do anything, but I just think that's like kind of a paradoxical kind of thing. And it's a very Sagittarius Gemini duality. Yeah, with Sagittarius moons, when I think of them, I just try to like unpack the whole box of Jupiter, and it goes back to this idea of it's the runaway feelings, the runaway thoughts, the wildfire. There's no boundaries, and it's the run-on sentence that doesn't have any punctuation and doesn't stop. The run-on, the what do they call it, a shaggy dog story. Like you're going on this trip, you're going on, there's the story is being told, and you're kind of at some point like, okay, what's the point of this story, or is it going to end? What's the moral? It's that no boundaries. And then we put the moon in Sagittarius. I see a lot of my cup runneth over types of
Mm.
emotionality about things like belief and faith and worldview, and even like politics and philosophy. Um, and that Sagittarian faith and ability to tell the story and have a story is so powerful. And it's sometimes, I think, more powerful than the Gemini data collection and fact based way of being
Yeah.
in the world. And it reminds me, there's this political philosopher, um, George Lakoff, and I haven't read him in a long time, but like this was like maybe 20 years ago when I was really into him. I'd like to get back into him. But he was comparing, and again, I'm not being political here. Actually, this is philosophical. He was comparing the way Republicans do politics and what they rely on versus the way Democrats do politics. And he found that the Republicans really pushed narrative and story, and Democrats really pushed data and facts. And this was at a time when Republicans were mostly in power. And he was pointing to like that is how powerful a good myth, a good story faith can be, just like with religion, that you can be then presented with all these facts and pieces of information. And if the story is strong enough, forget about it. No one's going to listen to your reasoning. And this is true even interpersonally. If you've ever had an argument with anyone and you logically present all the reasons, why you are right or this is correct, it's never going to beat a strong story or like origin myth that has too much power. And in
Mm.
both cases, you go too far on one side or the other, and you're entering a realm of distortion. So, yeah, I'm seeing
Becomes
a lot of
dogmatic
that.
at some point, right? Like
What?
it becomes dogmatic at some point, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so they need each other. And so hopefully, when we have oppositions like that, instead of this tug of war, we're actually trying to stand in the middle of these two and figure out a way to pull them together, because that's when I think each of them works best. And then you were talking about your Sagittarian friends, and I'm wondering if this will also resonate, because this is another big archetype. So we know it's the symbol for Sagittarius is the archer, and it's usually a centaur, a half man, half beast creature with the bow and arrow, and that trying to find coherence between the elevated man
Mm.
and the bestial. And because I have a lot of Sages in my life too, and talking about the bestial, this is the clown, the buffoon. This is the the drunkard. it's it's someone who's this little loud mouth who you just want to tell to shut up because they're just shooting off their mouth. And it's also the guru, the professor, the wise person, and the sage. So you have this like slovenly, almost, in a lot of mythology, it's like they're referred to as stupid
Yeah.
and dull. They're buffoons. And then you also have the most elevated wisdom teachers. How do you find the coherence? And I was thinking like a modern archetype for Sagittarius is the stand-up comic.
Mm.
They go up there and they make us laugh, and we're usually drinking, and sometimes they're drinking too. But the really good ones underneath, all of this, loud, funny behavior,
Big. Yeah.
they're they're usually doing some really smart social commentary and expressing some deep wisdoms. So yeah,
Absolutely.
so many things to think about with this full moon. Thank you for bringing up a lot of those. We're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna do some audience questions. You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and with me here is astrologer Mandee Sheeler, and she just gave us her full moon report. If we wanted to take a look at that and dig into that a little bit more, where could we find that?
Yeah, so that's on the Louisan.com. So there's the full report and then some prompts are yeah on the Louisan.com, and I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And we have some audience questions to get to under this juicy lunation. So I'm a little scared, Mandee.
No, don't be scared.
I don't want to tell that long, never-ending shaggy dog story. So let me know if I'm
Okay, I'll
all
send
the
you
way.
a signal. Okay. Okay, first question. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this, Corey. What are you most looking forward to about Venus and Leo?
Actually, that's harder. I mean, it sounds
Yeah,
very simple.
sure,
That's going to
sure.
be a complicated journey, I think. But what am I looking forward to? Venus is a lot of fun in Leo. Um, it's vibrant, and I think we could all use some vibrancy and extroverted out there-ness, some color. So collectively, I think that's gonna be fun. Personally, like I have a lot of Leo stuff. I'm Leo rising. And also something that Venus is going to be doing, which makes it's not just about the retrograde. It's while Venus is going through her retrograde, she makes contact multiple times with Jupiter and Uranus over the next 4 months. And that lends a lot more excitement to the Venus and Leo and the Venus and Leo story via retrograde. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but also a little trepidatious because Venus in contact with Jupiter and Uranus could be way over the top or overextended. And yeah, I would just want to make sure that my reach doesn't, exceed my grasp, if that is the idiom. Um, and what else? Looking forward to. I keep like trying to play this down. This could be a super romantic time. This could be a super sexy time. Um, I think people are going to really enjoy showing themselves, showing who they are. And isn't that like just so perfect for Pride Month? It's showing
Mm.
who you are. It's putting yourself on display and, quite literally being proud. So, yeah, I think that might be what I'm looking forward to most about Venus and Leo. And I'm curious if we're having a technical difficulty or are you still
Yeah,
there? Okay,
I'm still here. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So, yeah, on to the next unless you'd like to add something.
No, let's get to this next one because another good one. They're all good, but okay, this is it possible to believe in God and astrology?
Here we go. This is what I was, worried about. You're
Yeah.
back. I can see you.
Okay, I was gonna say
Yeah.
something just happened. Okay.
Now I can see you.
Okay.
Um, so short answer, yeah, of course. You can believe in God and astrology. But it's really, I think, and again, I did not grow up going to church. I have not no theological studies. I'm just it's never been very interesting to me, organized religion. Um, but I think it's really apples and oranges. So if you believe in, and here we go with this word again, this very Sagittarian word, believe. I think the only conflict God and astrology have is that if you believe there is like one entity up there in the sky that rules over everything, and if you believe that astrology is about planets dictating what
Mm.
you do, then of course there's going to be a conflict. But that's only if you work with astrology as a religion. Otherwise, there's no conflict. And most people I know who practice astrology in all kinds of different ways do not work with it as a religion. And I know a couple of people who do both, and they're of the belief that if God made everything on this earth, then God made astrology too. And so it's somehow okay with them. And yeah, I have trouble with that because people made astrology. But then it also works if their thinking is if God made everything on earth and God made the people, and then the people made astrology, then okay, like they accept it. Like I have a problem with that line of thinking. I think that has all kinds of like just thought form problems in it.
Hmm.
But that's kind of what I've heard. And okay. But there you go. It's like yeah, unless you think astrology isn't a religion, then you're going to have a conflict and then you can't. Because I'm sure like you've had some experience like personally with this.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I've heard people say astrology, like science for them, is proof that God exists. It's proof of this divine intelligence or this bigger divine being or power at be, which I find interesting. But then, yeah, there's also it's one or the other, and one is good and the other is Satan's work. So,
It's the tool of the devil.
yeah,
Um, okay.
which, yeah, we could unpack that in another hour-long show someday.
Yeah, maybe we'll save that for an off the chart.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that's as thoroughly as I can answer that question.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Next question. Is astrology a fortune-telling tool?
So this goes back to our conversation last week. And again, it depends how you use it. If you're using it, if you subscribe to fortune telling and you want to use astrology that way, and a lot of astrologers kind of use it that way, and I don't mean that in like a I'm throwing a little shade there because I don't believe in fortune telling. And there are astrologers I really respect who do predictive work, but that's very different than
Yeah,
fortune telling.
yeah.
Um, but if you wanted to use
I have,
astrology as a fortune telling tool, you can if you want to. But it's like again, I always use a hammer as an example. Um, is a hammer a toy or a weapon? Like it, you can how are you approaching the thing? How you're approaching the thing dictates what the thing is. And I guess for people who want to give their power and their agency over to something else, um, they can do that with astrology. They're probably going to do it with everything else they encounter, including religion, including politics, including um, philosophies or social movements. If that's how you're approaching life, like you want something else to tell you, you can find a million things to tell you how to be and what to do. Um, yeah, it's not an astrology issue. That's a like person issue and how they're approaching life, I guess.
makes me think of every tool as a weapon if you hold it right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, it's
Anything. A
Mhm.
marshmallow could be a weapon. Like, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Did I miss an angle on that? That's
No,
thorough.
no, I don't think so. That was very thorough. Yeah. We've got one more question. And this question is, what wisdom have you gained from your relationship with astrology?
So I see what you did here, Mandee. You put all these like
All the
giant, unanswerable in one sentence questions
uh-huh.
back.
It's only right, right?
And I hate it. I hate
I
it. But
know,
like
I know.
we made the agreement that I can't just have questions that I like and that I can answer easily. But this in particular is like super hard. I'll bring my
Sure.
personal astrology in. I have Neptune in Sagittarius opposite Mars in Gemini. And
Mm.
my tendency, and any of my Sagittarian friends will tell you this, is when they start to blow up this huge bubble, I come around with my Mars and Gemini and I just pop it. And so, like these big questions, I'm like, no, more detail, more specific,
Yeah.
more facts. But I'm just gonna piggyback on how I answered the question before this one. Um, that and this is like there are so many lessons that
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many things I've learned from astrology. There's so much wisdom in all of it. But the big one, I guess, would be is all energy, all things are neutral until you direct them, which is like going back to the last question. Um, this world is just filled with stuff that's pretty neutral. What gives things their meaning, whether you're going to slap a label good or bad or useful, not useful, or whatever you're going to do to that thing, that comes from you. And then you can do anything you want with these things. So, the big takeaway from astrology that has really helped me is it really just flipped my perspective. Instead of looking around and saying, oh, this is how life is and this is how things just are, and I have to behave within that like script or dictum, I I flip it and everything is just neutral and I'm the one who gives everything its meaning. And that takes a lot of work because,
Yeah.
our our whole history, our whole culture is, kind of conspiring to tell you what is and how you have to live in it. And so you really that astrology is a great tool for flipping that script so you have more agency. And and also I really believe that that's a lie, that 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 objectively these things are this way, these things are bad, these things are good. I just never bought into that. And so, but
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's so much. That's an impossible.
That was beautifully said, though. And I think that kind of touches on what you could extrapolate from that even further. I think that was a great overarching, yeah.
Thank you, Mandee.
We did it. We did another full moon show, Cory.
We did another full moon show, and please check out Mandy's amazing show notes and check out her written report. There's more to it than what you heard today. And
Yeah.
just thank you, Mandee, for always being here and being someone good to talk to, asking the good questions. I'm going to be here next week, same time, same place, with more astrology and another guest during this Gemini season. I hope you tune in. And until then, take it easy and take care.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.